been an amazing day so far. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to take this moment to thank everyone once again. Thank everybody who has agreed to participate. So thanks a lot. Our wonderful sponsors, Avon, Lipton and Microsoft. I also want to thank our partners, Pathfinders, everyone at Pathfinders, UN75, SDG Global Action Campaign, Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford University, and the Bingham Center for the Rule of Law. We couldn't have done it without our partners. They're all incredible. Thank you to all of the musicians, the actors, the panelists, the speakers, and everyone involved in the live Peace Day moments from around the world. Thanks to all the co-presenters today who are doing such an amazing job. And special thanks to my fellow producer, Jude Law, who has been just amazing as always. Before we start the second half of today's broadcast, we wanted to let you know that if you'd like to take part in any of our online polling or ask any questions of our panelists, you'll need to register for free to watch this broadcast at peaceoneday.org.
Now, the fifth of today's panel discussions titled Tech Pioneers for Peace. Jeremy, tell us the thinking behind this discussion.
Well, the only way we could make this year's show happen was to go fully digital. The situation with the COVID pandemic led us to create something that we couldn't have imagined. I mean, there are people tuning in from all over the world today. It's absolutely amazing. The technology has always been fascinating to us at Peace One Day. And we knew very early that it was critical we embrace new technologies to help us raise awareness of Peace Day. Because this is what it's all about. Raising awareness manifests action. And action reduces violence. It saves lives. Whether that's through the education resources, our social media, concerts and broadcasts. So, we wanted to set up a panel today to inform, inspire and engage people around the role of technology in addressing critical issues related to peace and sustainability.
I know that you've used technology to bring classrooms together. Could you tell us about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, technology is just amazing, right? I mean, look at what's happening today. But like way back, when we were working with Skype, we created a schools network. It was really very interesting. It was called Peace Talks. What would happen is the schools, would connect with each other. And what's really interesting is intercultural cooperation. The academics are saying is key to humanity's survival. Well, intercultural cooperation is all about dialogue. It's all about communication. So the idea of using Skype to get classrooms in Mexico to speak to a classroom in the Democratic Republic of Congo, right? I mean, that in essence is peacemaking, and technology allows us to do it. Technology is bringing us closer together.
Thank you. Well, to help us navigate this incredibly important discussion, please welcome our moderator, Executive Director of the Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford and the Peace Innovation Institute at The Hague, Margarita Kiwis.
Wow. And alongside her is long-time supporter of Peace One Day, now Senior Vice President, Strategic Customer Transformation and Innovation at Salesforce, Mark Mature.
Kate O'Sullivan, General Manager, Digital Diplomacy at Microsoft.
CEO of the Cyber Peace Institute, Stefan Duggan. Visiting Fellow, Institute of Strategic and International Studies, Malaysia, and Director of Political Security Affairs at the Asia Society Policy Institute, Eleanor Noor.
And Karma Ekmichi, Founder, Diplo Women, Advisor on Women, Peace and Security, Consultant with UN Women. Panelists, welcome. Margarita Kiwis, over to you.
Hello, everyone. This is Margarita Kiwis. I am the Executive Director of the Peace Innovation Lab at Stanford and the Peace Innovation Institute in The Hague. I am so excited to be with you today to moderate the panel on tech pioneers. We're going to have an exciting time this hour. And so I'm going to start by introducing our 5 panelists. They are amazing. So the first panelist is Mark Matteu. He is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Customer Transformation and Innovation at Salesforce. He was also the former CMO or Chief Marketing Officer at Samsung, Unilever, and Coca-Cola, and he has been a longtime supporter of Peace One Day. Kate O'Sullivan works at the intersection of geopolitics and tech policy. Kate leads Microsoft's digital diplomacy team to advance trust, security, and human rights in the online world. Her team works to promote digital peace, strong and secure democratic institutions, responsible security policy, and respect for human rights through multi-stakeholder public policy initiatives. Karma Ekmekci is the founder of Diplo Women and a consultant with UN Women on mediation. She's also an advisor on the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda and a member of the Mediterranean Women Mediators Network. Stefan Dugan is the CEO of the Cyber Peace Institute. He has spent 2 decades analyzing how technology is weaponized against vulnerable communities. He notably investigated multiple misuse of disruptive technologies, such as AI, in the context of cybercrime, cyber operations, hybrid threats, and terrorist use of disinformation techniques. And finally, last but certainly not least, is Alina Noor. She's the director of Political Security Affairs, Asia Society Policy Institute, and she is a visiting fellow for the Institute of Strategic and International Studies Malaysia, and she has also served on the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace. I am so excited to have all of you here. We've had such a great time getting ready for this panel, just in the warm-up. And first of all, a high five for Peace One Day, right? We think this is a great opportunity, and I'm so grateful to Jeremy Gilley and his entire team for putting this event together. And he's been doing this for over 2 decades. And in the year of 2020, I think we need 24 hours of intense positivity, and just having a day dedicated to peace is, I think, the thing that we need right now. So with that, we are really interested in the potential for peace, what the future of peace could look like. And what I really like about all the panelists is how diverse everyone is. So normally when there's a tech panel, it's the usual suspects, and they all come from Silicon Valley. And what we decided to do in this tech panel was really to mix it up, because one of the things that we've been talking about collectively is having more diversity and more stakeholders in the design and envisioning of technology for humanitarian and peaceful purposes. So I've got 2 tech companies, Salesforce and Microsoft. And when I first met Kate, so this is how it happened. I think it was 2 years ago. I saw Kate on Twitter, and I was like, what? Microsoft Peace? What the heck is that? And so I went on LinkedIn. I got to go find this woman, connect. Hi, you don't know me from Jack. We need to talk. And then we met in San Francisco last year. And I was so excited that Microsoft, the legendary Microsoft, was taking on peace. So Kate, tell me, what is Microsoft doing about peace?
Thank you, Margarita. What a nice memory of that meeting that we had together. But before I jump off to answer your question, I just want to thank you and my fellow panelists. It's been really a pleasure to explore these topics with you in the brief time we've had together. But most importantly, I want to wish everybody a happy International Peace Day, and the team at Peace One Day. Amazing work. And as you said, Margarita, we need to be focused and grounded in positivity. And so to transition to answering your question, why is Microsoft interested in peace? As makers and developers of technology, we view it as our primary responsibility to ensure that our customers and the people who use technology are safe from harm. And we have a major role to play in creating safe and secure products. That being said, we have particularly in the past decade seen an alarming trend with both cyber criminals and nation states have been using cyberspace to advance ill pursuits, crime and indiscriminate harm to civilians and civilian infrastructure, whether that's water delivery systems or nuclear reactors, systems that keep people able to go about their daily lives and to have dignity in doing so. So when we think about the future, we think about the fact that we must close the digital divide but we also must safeguard cyberspace to be a magical place in which peace prevails, and that it doesn't fall prey to warfare that doesn't have rules of the road. And so we engage with other governments, with other companies. Salesforce is a wonderful partner of ours in the Tech Accord to try to advance trust, security, and human rights, human dignity in cyberspace.
Fantastic. So, Stefan, you've been, if I think of us as like the Peace Avengers, although the Avengers like destroy buildings and we're not into destroying buildings. So we want to create peace in the world. You have been on the front lines of this as well in terms of, I think as technology it advances, and here we are in 2020, we're all operating digitally, right? We're not interacting face to face. So this digital world is where we're operating, and you've done a lot of work in that area. Tell me about how, the vulnerabilities, so we're aware of it, but also that you're on it, right? You're on the front lines, the tip of the spear, as we would say, to address these vulnerabilities. Talk to us about that.
Thank you very much, and happy International Peace Day, everyone, for sure. Kate mentioned a lot of the landscape already, and that's very true, very accurate. Being on the front line means being conscious that, and that's the topic today, that technology is having a key role. And it's not looking at technology in kind of a silo or something isolated, but more the convergence of several technologies that are moving exponentially. It's almost impossible to predict what is going to happen next. And what is complicated is to understand what is the convergence of these different technologies coming together can create, as if we're in a gloomy day, threat and risk. But if we are very positive and we want to be positive, what are the opportunities? What can we do with this technology to achieve peace? And in the context that is interesting, my institute, the Cyber Peace Institute, Cyber Peace. So you have to look at, in fact, part of the threat as maybe an idea for the solution. You may know that, Kate mentioned that, criminal groups are raving on the cyberspace for years, decades, and the same as state actors having ill activities. And the underlying model is what is called cybercrime as a service, meaning that you have several actors that are building their crimes, sometimes without knowing each other, just making the best of part of their skills, expertise to conduct an attack. You could argue that on the other end, having a collective work, having a collective capacity in order to counter this business model would be a good way to look at how converging technology could help.
Yeah, absolutely. When you told me about cybercrime as a service, my head went like, what? And it's been interesting because there's been an evolution in technology over the last 25 years from you used to buy software in a box, right? And like Microsoft Office in the 90s, it would come in a 10-pound box with all these CD-ROMs and the big manuals that no one read, and that was it. And then it transformed to software as a service. And so cybercrime as a service, it just never occurred to me that there would be, just as we have system integrators that find solutions off the shelf to help you do something end to end, that there are criminal forces that are also doing that. And so coming from Silicon Valley, this is something that we're very naive about, right? Because we're so busy trying to get our technology to work and our startup to launch, and we're just trying to get customers, right? And so this is the farthest thing from our mind because it's not part of our reality and our world. And having starting a dialogue like this with other stakeholders and say, hey, by the way, did you know that might make a difference in how young technologists especially start developing products and services. Karma, I know you and I have been talking about this as well, and what the importance is of having more inclusion in terms of innovation and design teams.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I was having breakfast this morning with my 5-year-old son, Yan. And coincidentally, Peace Day, he doesn't know that, but he tells me, he says, Mommy, I'm I want to create an app. By the way, he learns coding. He's 5, and he said, I want to create an app that stops humans from killing animals. So I look at this kid, and we have this panel tonight, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you just gave me, the best piece to start with, because it shows how much our design process for tech needs to be inclusive, and not only inclusive in the sense that it brings in all the different stakeholders who are involved in bringing peace, whether it's on the individual level or the community level or the national level or the international level, but also the cross-generational inclusivity, because what we will create will affect the kids, will affect the future generation, and bringing them on board early on also has an incredible added value. So I was very intrigued by what he said, and clearly it reinforced my belief, or my wishful thinking, that human beings are intrinsically, are good. They have good intentions, because this child, just had this idea out of the blue. So definitely inclusivity is important, and since we are in the business of peace, or the peace sector, I think that technology has a very important role to play, because we want to scale up peace. And we've seen that in every industry, whether it's in agriculture or healthcare or finance, tech has played a huge role. We have the fintech industry, the agrotech industry. So why not have the peace tech industry? Definitely an industry worth investing in, but also in an inclusive way, and from the get-go, introducing all the different stakeholders in the design process is a must. I come from the field of peace building on the ground, mediation, negotiation, hardcore conflicts, and really we feel like there is an absolute need for tech tools to help us do our job better. But if they're created without us being consulted, then it will be a waste of money and energy, and they won't really fit the challenges that we're trying to address.
Absolutely. I know that at Stanford, we've been a pioneer in terms of design thinking and human-centered design, right? And we've been doing that for like a quarter century. And when we think about how expanding that mindset, imagine doing peace-centered design, or equity-centered design, or justice-centered design, where these principles are baked into the DNA of your product development, baked into the DNA of how you innovate. So, or, ethical design, ethical considerations is not something that you tack on way after the fact. So, hey, by the way, we're doing this live, but it's something that is intrinsic in the organization and the ethos of how they operate, the way the powerful way that design thinking has been adopted as well. How do we introduce, like, when you design a product or services, how are you measurably increasing peace in the world, and how do you define that, right? And then in terms of inclusion in Silicon Valley means like, oh, well, did we get any women in the room? But inclusion is more than that. And Alina, we've been talking about a post-colonial view of innovation and how technology can approach that. And you're coming from Malaysia, and what can Malaysians do? And not that you speak for all Malaysians, but just from that point of view, that vantage point, that historical vantage point, there's a huge contribution that you can make.
Yeah, thank you. And definitely, I'm not going to speak for all of Malaysia or all of, the post-colonial world. But I think I'd like to pick up from where Kate left off. And I think the word that she used was dignity. And this is a very important word, because so much of conflict in the real world and in the virtual world as well stems from this denial of dignity. And I think what you mentioned about inclusivity and representation by design, building it in from the very beginning, rather than tacking it on either in the middle of the process or way after as an afterthought, that's exceedingly important. When we realize that by the year 2100, 90% of the world's population is projected to live outside Europe and North America. And yet so much of technology is being built in, quote unquote, the global north. Most of the world's population by 2050 will live in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. And so if most of the world is to be found in these regions, then surely the populations of these regions should have equal access to technology or proportionate access to technology, as well as an equivalent say in how technology should and will change their lives. And this goes also again to Kate's earlier point about norms and rules and the international governance structure of technology. Most of the world's population should have a say in this, and these structures should reflect the perspectives and the value systems of the world's majority.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that if I could put together like a product development dream team, of course I would have my UX UI designers and the people who could code, but I would also want people who could bring those voices in to say, say we wanted to create a platform where people could say anything they wanted in short messages. And we tested that and we said, okay, because we think that public discourse is going to be amazing, it's going to be great. And we test it. If we had a protocol to be able to say, one, did we get the intent? Are people, is it creating this wonderful platform where people can express themselves? But we could also have sensors to detect when it's being weaponized, or sensors that can detect when there's abuse. Then we could correct that. We could change aspects of the product or the user interface, or tweak the features to dial that down or make that harder to do, while still maintaining the original intent of having people be able to talk and exchange ideas, right? And I think that as we start innovating, we need to think about what is it that we're trying to build and intend with the product, but also we have to check, is something unexpected happening? And now that we have this body of history and all this analytics with technology, we can actually do that now. It would have been difficult to say, in 1995, can we do that? But now we have Internet of Things, we have so much data, especially behavioral data, where we could start putting in those frameworks and those safety guards, right? So it's almost like clinical trials for software. We want it to do good. We think it's going to cure the disease, but if it killed all these people, then that's no good. We gotta we can't put it out on the market. Having that type of thinking, I think, would do a lot to make technology really fulfill its potential in the world to do good. And when I look at this, Karma, because I've been talking about how do we catalyze the peace tech industry, and I'm looking at the statistic that preventing and reducing violence and investing in peace is a really sound investment. And having global conflict violence alone could save $2 trillion by 2030. $2 trillion. Imagine what you could do with those $2 trillion in terms of water security, food security, all of these things. Mark, you've been looking at peace for a long time. You're a marketer. How could we tell the story? How can we market peace so it's something that people want to invest in and that people want to put resources behind, especially for companies, because for so many of us, we spend so much of our time in the workplace and interacting with people who are very different from ourselves.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started to support Peace One Day and Jeremy in particular more than 15 years ago. And at that time, I was actually leading marketing for Coca-Cola. And at that time, it felt like it was the right thing to do, but it was indeed bringing the power of the marketing machine to Peace One Day in the form of, yes, some money, but importantly, the brand that could actually be used to herald the message of Peace One Day. Since then, I've actually continued to work with Peace One Day with Jeremy. And one of the things I always say is peace can be seen on one hand as something very big and very lofty and unattainable. If you look at it as peace in the world, and it can also be seen as something quite distant if you look at it just as conflict areas. Whereas in reality, everything we've been talking about since the beginning of this conversation is more about, what I tend to call everyday peace, which is peace at home, peace in the schools, peace on the internet. Stefan talked about that before. And so I think that the most important thing is to cut peace in pieces, which is actually why I love the new logo, the logo of Peace One Day, with this, what's your part, what's your piece, and the reality to make it relevant to various companies, various brands, various individuals' agendas, and that's one of the things that I think more and more we have to do if we want all the businesses, not just a few of them, to support the peace agenda, to help market the peace agenda, is to make sure that we make it relevant to the individual businesses and brands, and also that we look at it. Of course, the objective today is, and again, happy International Peace Day to everyone on this stream. But it's not just about today. It's about peace every day. And that's another thing which I think is important when you look at it overall.
Yeah. So how can we make peace a habit? Karma.
Well, I mean, again, I think this panel in itself is a testimony, and this day, Peace One Day's global digital experience, is a testimony to the importance of multilateralism. And I just want to drive home this message. Multilateralism today is under threat. We are faced with global challenges, and this needs global collaboration, cooperation, and leadership to address these challenges. But at the same time, we feel that multilateral institutions have been weakened. I think that tech can play a super important role as a catalyst for peace and to strengthen these multilateral institutions that are struggling with the notion of, their raison d'être these days. So it's very important for me what Mark said about compartmentalizing peace, because peace is definitely, in different concentric circles. And I began by saying, maybe I work on the larger concentric circle, conflict zones, whatnot. It's distant for the mainstream population, but then we need to zoom in into the individual and see how we can change the behavior of human beings. I mean, today you have all behavior economics, digital technologies influencing the behavior of human beings and what they like and what they don't like. We need to channel all this energy, all this momentum towards how we can change human behavior for it to become more peaceful, to use our technologies, our existing technologies. And when we say technology, the people generally think about social media. It's a much larger menu than just social media. And we need to get all these different technologies, AI, machine learning, and try to see how we can create these amazing mechanisms that would allow us to influence people in a way that makes them more peaceful. And I'm a firm believer that if at the individual level we change that behavior, it's a ripple effect, and these concentric circles with time will be affected. And someone once told me, peace is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I'm so happy we're having this discussion today on the importance of tech and peace, because I believe that the peace tech industry will flourish, and we need to start the discussion today.
Stefan, I know that I wanted to call on you to build on Karma's comments. But before you do that, so Karma, I love this because the Peace Innovation Lab came out of an effort from BJ Fogg in 2007, and he's a behavioral psychologist. He said, how could we create peace by changing people's behavior? So within our lab, our question is, how good can we be to each other? And we look at how technology helps us be good to each other. So yes, we're on it. We're definitely on the behavior change of peace and what are the tiny habits of peace, right? On an everyday basis. As Mark was saying, peace is an everyday thing. It's not something just about treaties among nation states. It's something that we all do with each other. But yeah.
On this, if I could add, Margarita, to echo Mark and Karma, this slicing of different aspects of peace in order to make it more maybe understandable, manageable for the communities. That's how we look into cyber peace. It's really looking at this. We talk a lot about human-centric, as if we need to focus a bit on human while we continue to do the same. It's really in this context to start with the interests of human beings when it comes to one of these slides, in our case, the cyber part, and looking at cyber peace as a state of play when human dignity, it was mentioned already, human security and equity will exist in any interaction that you have with the cyberspace. And there, if you look at this from that point of view, right away, you look into societal impact of attacks, of mutation of technologies, of behavior. What is going to happen when augmented reality is converging with artificial intelligence? Is this going to have a societal impact? If yes, if this is going to be good for population. And you start looking at this from that point of view. And it helps a lot for the planning, for this multilateral engagement, as Karma was mentioning, into having the right stakeholder around the table, into looking at accountabilities. Because when you look into the different responsibility of actors in this field, being states, being industry, being civil society, everyone has a responsibility. You and I also, we have one because we're using this space. But if we look at, is this okay for the security, dignity, and equity of population that are using that space, it's a valid operational starting point.
Yeah, and having been in academia now for the last 10 years, it's one of the great opportunities is to start integrating those questions and considerations in the curriculum for engineering and computer science students. So one of the efforts that we've been working on is peace engineering, to reimagine engineering education, to include these considerations, to have more stakeholders in. So because the days of an engineer making something and then throwing over the transom and saying like, well, whatever the second order effects, that's somebody else's problem, doesn't work anymore. We need the engineering community to think more expansively and understand that technology is in the service of humanity. It's in the service of people wanting to live happy, healthy lives. And it's not just people, but all living things. We also need to consider nature as being a stakeholder. Who's a representative of nature? And does nature have a voice in saying like, wait a minute, that technology that you're implementing isn't good for me, right? And I think that when we start thinking it more holistically, then technology can actually fulfill its potential to be a great tool to help us have a more humane, safe planet. And Mark, I know that you've got a lot of thoughts about this as well.
Yeah, well, I echo a lot what you just were talking about. I mean, when I work, for Coca-Cola, as I mentioned, I've afterwards worked for Unilever. 15 years ago, that importance of the role of, not just technology, but business to play a part was not that obvious. I think Unilever had a very strong, belief that there was a role that businesses could play in technology, in global agendas like sustainability and therefore like peace. But what's interesting about when I joined Salesforce, I really think it's a company that since its inception built what they call a 1+1+1 model, so 1-1-1, where they donate, the company donates 1% of people's time, equity, and its products to nonprofits. And so that's actually how I can spend, up to 7 days a year and invest my time and money and also the products and technology of the company behind Peace One Day, which Salesforce has been supporting for about 10 years, I think. So the reality, making that model of business as a platform for change and It's one of the things that's at the inception of Salesforce, but should be, and is in a way, and that's why we also have Microsoft on this call, at the heart of more and more companies, is to me a critical element of really pushing as an agenda in all the tech companies, is making sure that we look at all the stakeholders and that we look at how technology can actually, from employees to communities to the planet, have an impact through the power of business. And it's broader than technology, is technology as business.
Absolutely. And Margarita, what you were saying about integrating things into the curriculum of university students, I'd go further. I'd integrate it into the curriculum of K through 12. I mean, if we want to have real organic change in the future, we need to start integrating those ideas from the very early age. And again, as a mother of 2 boys, for me this is super important, and I try to integrate it in our day-to-day lives, these notions, these understandings, and I think we need to jump further than just the college students. I think we need to go straight to the K.
Okay.
Yeah, I would totally agree with many of the comments, if not, every comment that's been made so far. But I wanted to jump in too to just share a little bit about, the way we approach inclusive design at Microsoft. And one of the things that I think is really important from a point of departure is we think ethics is innovation. And we have teams of people who work with our engineers to help them through a process that we call responsible innovation. And then from a policy perspective, our approach is really to live by a set of principles. And when we have a cutting edge technology that, we can all admit technology has the potential to do, both good, and on the other hand, it could do harm if it's not potentially thought through all of the implications. And so, for example, using facial recognition technology, a very powerful technology that could help save lives, but it also has a risk associated with it. So when we develop a technology like that, the whole process goes through a responsible innovation process, and we apply our principles: fairness, transparency, accountability, non-discrimination, consent, lawful surveillance. And we won't sell our technology if we don't believe those principles will be adhered to. And then next kind of gets into what Karma mentioned about multilateralism. We know that the technology industry, a technology company, we can't do this by ourselves, that we need partnerships. We need to partner with governments. This idea of multi-stakeholderism, particularly to solve some of the biggest problems and opportunities out there. Multi-stakeholderism, we think, is key. And there's some great examples. Even the work, we're proud to be supporters of the Cyber Peace Institute, which is really trying to bring together civil society to have a force for change, but also working with governments. For example, with the Paris Call for Trust and Security Online, that's over 1,000 entities around the world have come together, signed up to 9 principles to create peace in cyberspace. Over 80 governments and civil society and industry all coming together to try to create normative behavior. And we think that's the model for the future. And we invite everybody to try to get engaged, whether you're an individual or a company or government. Like, these are issues that we all need to work together from a multi-stakeholder standpoint.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree, and I think for all of us on the panel, we're the choir, and we may be preaching to the choir in the audience. But I think it's also key to understand that there are people who disagree with us out there, and it's important to try to reach out to figure out solutions to change the course of direction on some of the discussions that are taking place at the international level when it comes to peace and technology. There were mentions of multilateralism and multi-stakeholderism. These are all really important concepts. Another concept that has been thrown out there that's very popular now is capacity building. But capacity building can only take place when it's meaningful on both sides or among multi-parties. And how does that become meaningful? It becomes meaningful when all the parties know what they want from each other and can come to some sort of agreement on what they want out of the capacity building. I think very often we consider capacity building to be a one-way transfer of knowledge, of technological skills from a developed country to a less developed country, and that often takes place. But there's also a lot of two-way information that can flow the other way in the reverse direction to make ourselves in the global south better heard, better understood, so that technology can be developed for the rest of the world, and so that it accords dignity to those people out there who may not care about these global governance structures or how international law should work in cyberspace, but who just want real world applications that they can use to better their lives on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was reflecting on what Kate shared in terms of what Microsoft is doing, and Microsoft is a mature company. And so what's been interesting to see is that you actually have this framework in place, that you have this checklist, and you are baking this into the DNA of your products and services. I'm so excited because that's, if we can get more of that, then that creates the safe and secure implementation of new innovation. And then in terms of Alina saying, like, how do we make sure that the conversation it's a two-way street to get more voices, especially from the developing South, because there's a lot of knowledge and insight about problems and potential solutions. And especially as we go into this challenging decade with climate change, and we have this pandemic, and these systems that are being challenged in a way that they haven't been before, there are a lot of insights in terms of even coping solutions or ways to deal with it from the developing South that the West may not be aware of. And so in the West, we're freaking out because all of a sudden things don't work. And the developing South is like, hey, hold my beer. We've been dealing with this, and we have ways to cope with it. And we've adapted, and you can learn from us. There's wisdom, deep wisdom there. And I think having that exchange then can help us build more resilient technologies and more resilient societies. Yeah. So I'm curious, and we've got like 10 minutes left. So here's the 5, and it's 5 years from now. We're looking back on this day, and we had this panel, and we were like optimistic. Kate was sharing the amazing stuff that Microsoft is doing. Mark is telling us that it's not just tech, but business has a role to play in terms of creating peace in the world. Stefan is defending the cyberspace and making sure that it's safe for all of us. Karma, we're all sitting somewhere in a great hotel somewhere because we can travel again, no masks, we're having drinks. We've become good friends. What have we accomplished in the 5 years? Tell me, Karma.
Well, we've definitely taken this conversation further. We have great investors in the peace tech industry who believe in the positive impact of peace. They believe that in order to have security brings peace, that cybersecurity brings peace, and this peace in turn brings prosperity. We are discussing how women in different conflict zones are using amazing apps developed for their safety, for them to be able to alert when they're in danger, how technology has helped bring down gender-based violence, domestic violence, how technology is being able to create a whole generation of young boys and girls who are able to relate to peaceful behavior in a very natural, intrinsic, and implicit way. We have been able to create peace between nations because the human brain hasn't been able to compute how to bring peace and show that it's a profitable thing to do. But AI and machine learning have taken all these massive data over years and years of conflicts and said, oh, that's the solution. That's why we're not being able to achieve peace, because we're doing things wrong. It's probably what the conversation will be, at least in my dream world.
Fantastic. So, Mark, we're sitting and you're saying, hey, 5 years from now, I was able to get business to realize that they're in the business of creating peace. So what's
and
happening?
as I mentioned, on one hand, it's twofold. It's business as the greatest platform for change, and then it's technology as an enabler. One of the things I mentioned, the 1-1-1 model of Salesforce. One of the things that Salesforce is actually doing is created, almost a movement with now I think more than 10,000 companies that have joined this idea of pledging 1%. And there is actually, if some businesses are listening, a website which is pledge1%.org, which enable any business to sign up and pledge to give 1% to, actually a non-profit agenda. And then there is technology as an enabler to identify, to track, and eventually to prevent, in a non-intrusive way, but in an effective way, non-violence. And to prevent violence. And so that's where I think that if we look 5 years from now, having this habit of more and more companies embed in their business model agendas like supporting peace, and then having this segmentation we talked about, so that different companies can do their piece, either in the identification, in the tracking, in the prevention, or all of the above of some of the agendas that the Peace One Day is overall trying to address globally.
Fantastic.
So 5 years from now, right, we're all together and our phones are going off because we all have social media. We live by social media even more, but our phones are going off because we have been included into a network of networks with people from all over the world represented in how to make peace and technology coexist and mutually reinforce each other. And this can be on a social media platform or various platforms. And we're all exchanging ideas in a meaningful and significant way where we can scale up peaceful applications on the ground that work at the regional and even global levels. What some people say glocal, right? A combination of local and global. So that's my little dream world.
Fantastic. Stefan,
5
years.
We would make the best of the abundance of technology that we see. There's so much technology and so much promises going with it. But we make sure that normally with an abundance, it comes a scarcity. And this time we don't have scarcity in natural resources on the planet. There's no scarcity in human security, in human dignity, in equity. That would be nice. And that's we reach that point where we can be courageous in looking at different accountabilities, that all actors are looking into what they are supposed to do in this space in order to participate to this collective endeavor of peace. We don't need to blame and shame anymore. Everyone knows that it's a collective game, it's a collective venture, journey, and we are all very committed to it.
Fantastic. Kate, by the way, you're my managing director for our Peace Tech Venture Fund, just letting you know. So that's your role in 5 years.
Okay, I hope my boss isn't listening. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out and stay at the macro level, but in 5 years, we are toasting a landmark convening of governments, industry, and civil society that resulted in the adoption of binding commitments that govern how nation states operate and weaponize technology, and that people and their way of lives and their dignity has been preserved, and effectively a digital peace breaks out. Some of the biggest challenges, as we all know, in cyberspace relate to the escalating conflicts without clear expectations of responsible behavior online. So with this convening and this result, we have sorted all that out and we're all in agreement, and now we just enjoy digital peace.
Excellent. So I'm in my world, I'm known as the what are we going to do on Monday morning girl. So whenever I work with executives, I get super concrete. So, okay, so this is my vision 5 years from now. So we have catalyzed a peace tech industry. So what happens next year is we launch a venture studio for peace tech entrepreneurs, and we're working to get 6 to 8 startups off the ground, and we do that every year. We launch a venture fund, a $500 million venture fund for peace tech companies, right? We set up, within our Peace Innovation Lab, we've set up a peace data standard that becomes the norm for how companies track how much peace they're creating in the world, and that dashboard, that peace data becomes a common denominator. So we can see any product or service that we put out there, how much positive peace is it generating? And we have this very nice tight feedback loop so that the engineers and designers are always thinking from inception, yeah, I got to see how much positive engagement I'm creating in the world, right? And we actively measure that, and we can value that so we know what the economic impact of all that positive engagement is. Because whenever we can cooperate and collaborate with each other, we can create more value for each other. And that's powerful. I want to move people from, instead of saying reducing violence, which we absolutely have to do, to what are the creative, wonderful things that we can do together instead, and put our energy there. We're going to have our first IPO of this fabulous peace tech company that's going to set the example and inspire young people to start their own peace tech ventures. And for companies and everyone, we're all going to realize that peace is something that we do every single day. And it's just going to become a movement. It's just going to be part of the vocabulary. This is what we do. We are kind to each other. We're compassionate. We're empathetic. Our products and services, our customer experience has kindness, compassion, and empathy baked in, right? That's what I want to see in the world. Wow. We've got 2 minutes left. I can't believe that we did this on time. And I know that when we did the dress rehearsal the other day, we had so many ideas. Thank you so much. If people want to get involved in what you're doing, what is the best way to reach you or connect with you? Okay, I'll start. Peaceinnovation.com. I'm on peaceinnovation.com. I'm on Instagram, MS Kiwis. I can be found on Twitter, Marga Kiwis, and on Facebook. So just Google me and you can find me. Kate, how can we get involved with what you're doing?
I go to the Cyber Peace Institute website. That's Stefan, and also another one as an individual. Go to Digital Peace Now, learn about these issues, get engaged, and help us create the world you just described.
Great. Karma, how do we find you on social?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. I'm KDiploWomen, and on Instagram, where I'm more active, Karma Ekmekci or DiploWomen, either way. Reach out to me, and especially if you're from the Middle East. This is a new topic here in our region, and I'm very happy to guide, help, and see how we can collaborate. I'm super excited to be part of this 5-year plan. Totally sold, and we're going to make it happen.
Great. Mark, how can we best reach you?
So either Mark at Matt on various networks or salesforce.org. And I encourage you also to look, given what you said before, on Tableau, which has a lot of analytics, which are really interesting to look at, violence against women, US gun violence, COVID-19 tracking. So I think it's another great way to connect.
Great. And Alina, quick, we have 5 seconds.
Twitter, just my name, Alina Noor.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And after that, we're going to set a date where we're going to meet in 5 years for drinks. Yeah?
Let's do it.
Great.
Thank you, panelists, for bringing some light to such an important topic.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And a huge thank you to Microsoft for sponsoring that tech panel.